Hello and welcome to Adepicos Online. We're looking at Module 4, Performance of the Overall Learning Journey of How to Lead, and we're looking at Step 2, Human Capital. Human capital matters because it's a measure of how capable your people are at delivering results. The higher your levels of human capital in your team or organization, the more capable your people are of delivering great results. And so we can see there's a crucial relationship between the amount of training that people get and the capability that they have to deliver great performance. And of course, that's very clear in football. The team that trains harder and better is typically the team that over time is more successful. So we can see in football, the more training that you do, the more successful your team will be. And it's exactly the same in leadership. The more training the team has, or the more training the organization has, the more effective it will be. And it's the task of the leader to ensure that the team is getting the training. It is not the task of the leader to deliver all the training themselves. That's obviously impossible. But it is your task to make sure that your team is always getting the training that it needs to upgrade its skills and be at the cutting edge of its creative potential. And this is where we can see the great quote from Jack Welch, in which he talks about the transition that happens when before being a leader and after being a leader. He says that before you're a leader, success is all about growing yourself. After you become a leader, it's all about growing others. So in other words, a basic concept in leadership is your ability to develop others. And the more effective you are as a leader, the greater your ability to improve the skills of your people. In other words, the greater your ability to improve the human capital in your team or your organization. And this is where we can see the second quote from Al-Makahi describes why it's so important to have great people and why it's so important to develop your people. Because they are your competitive advantage. The better your people, the better the results that they can deliver. But crucially, it's hard to copy people. It's easy to imitate processes or to develop very similar products, but it's very hard to create the same level of team as your competitor. People are obviously unique, and the teams and environments that they form are equally unique. So as a leader, you can create a great advantage by bringing your people to the cutting edge and developing the human capital in your organization. And that really is the key task of the 21st century leader. And this contrasts strongly with what the typical management role was of the 20th century world. In the 20th century world, it was all about efficiency and optimizing performance. You didn't really invest in training because it was expensive. People just had to do the same old task day in, day out, and the job was done. But in our modern, rapidly changing world, where we don't even know what's going to happen in the next 6 months, let alone the next 6 years, it's crucial that we develop the capability to always upgrade our skills to stay ahead. And that is why the 21st century leader is someone who is skilled at enabling and empowering others to develop themselves. Because in doing so, by maximizing human capital development, you put your team and you put your organization at its maximum creative ability and maximize its ability to deliver success and great results. And so we can also compare this with the idea of a band. Imagine you're leading a band, and at the beginning, everyone's at the same level. But now imagine that only half the people in the band regularly show up for training. Now, after a year, the people who turn up for training and turn up for practice are going to be much better than the people who haven't been practicing at all. And what you're going to have is a very uneven team. And it's going to be difficult for the people to play because there'll be different levels of capability. And so that's why it's important to make sure that everyone is getting the training that they need in order to be successful. You can't just focus it on one or two people. Everyone needs to improve their capability if you're to improve the overall performance of the team. To continue the metaphor, imagine if you only improved the singing skills in the band of the lead singer, but you didn't improve the skills of the drummer or the guitarist or the trumpet player. That would mean that you'd have a great singer, but the rest of the band didn't have the training in order to really show off that singer's skills, and it'd be a waste. In other words, what you need to do is develop the skills of all the players in order to ensure the overall performance is improved. So what do you need to know about human capital? Well, first, let's start with the definition. Human capital is the stock of competencies, knowledge, social and personality attributes, including creativity, embodied in the ability to perform labor so as to produce economic value. What does that really mean? What it means is human capital is a measure of your ability to deliver value. The higher your level of human capital, the greater your ability to deliver value to other people. It's as simple as that. So someone who's highly skilled and who can deliver lots of value to other people has a high level of human capital. And in the reverse, someone who has not many skills and can't really do very much has a low level of human capital because they can't create a lot of value. And so therefore we can see that what your task is as a leader is to ensure that your people are always developing their skills so that you're always moving up the value chain and making sure that you have the best possible team delivering the best possible results. But there's a crucial thing to remember here, which is that you need to have a diversity of skills within your team. Another way of thinking about this is you need to have a mixture of tools in your toolbox. If a carpenter only had a hammer, well, they'd only be able to solve a limited number of problems. A good carpenter has a number of different tools, such as a hammer, screwdriver, saw, and so on, in order to effectively solve the different challenges that they face. In the same way, your team needs to have different varieties of skills and capabilities in order to face the challenges that come by on the day-to-day. Imagine if you only ran your football team with defenders. You had no strikers, you had no midfielders, you had no goalkeepers. Obviously the team will have a great defense, but it won't be very successful at scoring goals or winning games. And so, don't focus on just developing one skill, but really focus on developing a great portfolio of skills and have a diversity of capabilities in order to make sure you can be as effective as possible. So how do you do this? How do you go about developing the skills of others? Well, in order to do that, you need something called emotional intelligence, or EQ, and it stands in distinct contrast to what we're normally familiar with, IQ, or intelligence quotient. So, modern research has shown that whereas we traditionally felt that there was only one form of intelligence, which we called IQ, there's actually likely to be many different types of intelligence. And one of the most important ones of these is emotional quotient. And actually, the metaphor of the iceberg is very useful here. Because whereas in the day-to-day society we're normally fixed on the IQ, it's actually our emotional quotient that enables us to be successful in our day-to-day activities. And let's go and find out why. The reason is that emotional intelligence enables us to identify, assess, and influence the emotions of oneself, of others, and of groups. Now, what does that really mean? What that means is your emotional intelligence enables you to work well with people. People are emotional. People are driven by their emotional states. We are not simply mindless, superbly rational, logical robots who have no concern for anything other than the logical ideal. It's the complete opposite. We're driven by our passions, by our fears, by things that we love and hate, and we need to recognize that as leaders. Because as leaders, we're working with people, and if we can't work well with people using our emotional intelligence, then we're not going to be a very effective leader overall. So in order to develop our emotional intelligence, we need to focus on 4 crucial areas. The first half we can split up into focusing on yourself. We need to develop the capacity for self-discipline and self-awareness. What this really means is, self-discipline is about managing your emotional estate. You might be feeling really angry and pissed off at somebody, but that doesn't mean you should go out and shout at them. You need to take control of your emotions and use your awareness to find an appropriate way of working with that individual. Is your anger justified? If it is, then find a way to express it in an appropriate and effective way. Don't just go in and shout at that person. And we can see here how the two concepts of self-management and self-discipline are combined with the idea of self-awareness. Because we use our self-awareness to improve our ability to control our emotions. The reason why this matters is that none of us want to work with or for a leader who constantly shouts at us at random and is a complete emotional mess. Imagine working with someone who goes from the highest highs of exuberant happiness to the lowest lows of depression, anger, and frustration, and that they're constantly taking it out on the people around them. That's not a great work environment, and you're certainly not going to feel very happy and effective working with that kind of leader. So it's supremely important that you develop self-discipline and self-awareness of your emotional states. On the other hand, we need to look to other people. We need to build our ability to manage the relationships around us and develop something called social awareness. Now, social awareness can be understood as the idea of empathy. In other words, you can put yourself in someone else's shoes. You can understand what they're thinking and you can understand what they're feeling. And that's crucial, because if you're trying to lead somebody, you can't just simply speak to their rational side. You have to understand what it is that they're really feeling. If you're working with your colleague and, for example, their parents were very ill, you can't simply just go on about how inspiring the vision is, because they're obviously preoccupied with something that's very important for them. Their emotional state is going to be very challenging. They're going to be very upset. Maybe they'll be very angry, frustrated, or afraid. And you need to be able to understand as a leader how that person is working, and you need to be able to empathize with them and work with them in an appropriate way. You need to respect the fact that they are in that emotional state and work with them to find a way to make them feel comfortable. And this takes us to a crucial point about emotional intelligence. The point is not, I repeat, not to get rid of emotions. Leaders need to embrace emotions because they're incredibly powerful and useful for driving us forward and being successful. However, we need to also respect the power of emotions and understand that when we are feeling what we're feeling, we can't just simply ignore it or eliminate it. We need to confront the way that we feel and be honest with ourselves and the people around us. The key point there is to do that in an appropriate way. You can't just simply share what you think of someone straight out. It's important to do it in a way that's effective and respectful. That doesn't mean you need to shy away from the truth, but it's about using the right language to express that in an appropriate way. And then finally, we have relationship management. And what that's about is about expressing to yourself how the people around you are organized. It's important to read who likes who doesn't like who, which people are willing to work together, and which people hate each other so much that they'd never work together effectively. This is extremely important because it strikes to the very practical heart of what it means to lead people. There are plenty of teams that have failed where they had great people, they had great leadership, but the problem is that too many people within the team simply didn't like each other and couldn't work together effectively to get the job done. And so effective awareness and effective relationship management is crucial for ensuring the success of your team. So what's a practical way of using emotional intelligence to be a more effective leader and develop human capital? So Daniel Goleman has been a pioneer of emotional intelligence, and he's created 6 leadership styles that describe how we can use our emotional intelligence to improve the human capital in our teams. And don't worry, I'm not going to read through the entire slide. I try and avoid reading out slides as much as I can. I'm just going to touch on the key concepts here. So the first point to recognize is that you need to master all 6 of these leadership styles. The real skill of a leader is to understand when to use which style for which situation to get the effective result. And that's something that's going to come with experience. So what you need to do now is first learn about these styles, and then over time you get to practice them and learn how to use which one for the right situation. So the visionary leadership style is important for developing human capital because it inspires people to develop themselves. Rather than you always pushing people to develop themselves, by using the visionary leadership style, people will use their own initiative to go out there and get the skills that they need to build the vision that they are so excited about. The coaching and leadership style is really effective for enabling people to improve their skills. If you need them to improve a particular skill set or address a weakness, then using the coaching leadership style enables your people to improve themselves in that way. The affiliate leadership style is focused more on improving people's morale and confidence. Sometimes people have the skills that they need, but they lack the confidence to actually go there and make it happen. And that's where this style becomes very useful for improving people's confidence. The democratic style is about empowering people to make the decisions for themselves. It's crucial to recognize that as a leader, you cannot make all the decisions yourself. The reason for this is that you'll end up drowning and being overwhelmed by how many decisions you need to make. You need to empower your people to make the decisions for themselves. You should always be there in the background, paying attention to what's happening, but you need to trust your people to make the right decisions. And that's where the democratic style comes in. You develop your people and the human capital in your team by giving them the responsibility and ability to decide for themselves what they need to do. So these first 4 styles are focused on more of a hands-off approach to leadership. And you should spend most of your time in the visionary to democratic styles because you don't want to be operating as a command and control leader. For the simple reason that, as we discussed previously in the passionate people section, that severely limits the capability of your team. However, there are times when you need to push your team, or even times when you need to take absolute control. And that's what the pace setting and commanding styles are for. Pace setting is about stretching your people to push themselves. You're challenging them to get out their comfort zone and push themselves really hard to achieve results that they otherwise wouldn't be able to achieve. Now, this is a very important skill to use, but the great danger is that we overuse it. We can't always expect people to push themselves to the maximum. If we do this without any break, we simply exhaust people and they end up demotivated and frustrated at their inability to achieve the unobtainable goals. So you need to use pace setting intelligently. Use it at the appropriate time to get your people to stretch themselves, but don't use it all the time, because that simply is unimaginative, but more importantly, will frustrate your people and prevent them from actually achieving the goals in the long term. Finally, the commanding style. This is the absolute control style, in which you come in and it's essentially the dictatorship style. Now, it's extremely important sometimes to use this style when there are situations of great uncertainty or great fear and we need clear direction and structure to go forward. Typically, this will be a time of great crisis. The limit of this leadership style is it doesn't actually really develop the people because you're completely in charge. And so that's why it needs to be used in a very sparing sense. Use it only when you really need to use it. Use it to create the stability that's necessary and then as quickly as possible transition to the other leadership styles. So in summary, as a leader, you want to understand how to use all 6 of these leadership styles in order to be an effective leader. Pick the right style for the right situation, but by and large you should be between visionary and democratic, and occasionally using pace setting and commanding to continually push your teams to upgrade their performance. So in summary, why does human capital matter? It matters because the basic concept is that the better your people, the better the performance that they can deliver. Improving your human capital is important because it improves your ability to deliver results. At the same time, you need to ensure you have a diverse toolbox of skills. You don't want everyone to have the same skill set because you might be confronted with a problem that no one can solve. So it's important to have a diversity of people and a diversity of skills to make sure you have the portfolio of capabilities that you need to match all the challenges that you face. And then finally, continuous human capital development is necessary. People need to keep developing and improving themselves in order to keep up with a continuously changing world. If you don't, then you run the great risk of being left behind. A great example of human capital development is General Electric. Started in the late 19th century by Thomas Edison, it has grown to become one of the largest companies in the world, building things such as jet engines, to fridges, to healthcare products, to financial services. It has a wide portfolio of products, but at the core of its company are its people, and that's reflected in where it invests its money. The training budget for General Electric is over $1 billion a year. That means that it spends over $3,300 per person per year on training and development. That's obviously a huge figure, but the results speak for themselves. General Electric is consistently one of the best companies in the world because it consistently has the best people in the world to lead and run the organization. This means that it has the best people who can deliver the best products, but also the best leaders who can enable the organization to adapt to change and reinvent itself to take on new challenges. And that really is the key to success of one of the world's most successful companies. Its continued commitment to developing the best leaders in the world by investing in its human capital. So in summary, what do you need to do? You need to understand that in a rapidly changing world, you need to constantly develop the skills of your people. Gone are the days where people will just turn up for work and do the same old thing for years on end. People need to constantly upskill in order to keep pace with the rapidly changing world. In order to work with your people effectively, you need to use your emotional intelligence. The best leaders are not the smartest leaders in the sense of IQ. The best leaders are those who are able to work with their people using a range of intelligences, most importantly emotional intelligence, to understand and empathize with their people. After all, in the end, leadership is about working with people, not with machines. And finally, do this by mastering the 6 leadership styles. By being a master of the 6 leadership styles, you'll be able to use the right leadership style for the right situation and drive your team forward to success.